You're old enough to kill, but not for voting. You don't believe in war.
The FBI spent 31 months investigating a rock song, only to admit they had no idea what was being said. But the mystery made it a massive hit. Stay with me, because this is one of the wildest stories in music history. 20. Revolution. The Beatles. 1968. John Lennon took a massive risk with this one. A song about revolution should be loud, aggressive, and completely radical, right? But this? It confused everyone. Some thought it was too soft. Others feared it was too extreme. So which was it? When the Beatles released Revolution, the world was already on fire. Protests, civil rights battles, and anti-war demonstrations were everywhere. People wanted a soundtrack for change, but this song gave them mixed signals. Lennon sings, "You say you want a revolution. Well, you know, we all want to change the world." But then he adds, "But when you talk about destruction, don't you know that you can count me out?" That's when things got controversial. Some radicals expected the Beatles to fully support revolutionary action, but Lennon hesitated. This message wasn't a call to arms, it was a reminder that revolution could be dangerous. That single line, "Count me out," split the audience. The distorted, gritty sound of the track was unlike anything the Beatles had done before. It was raw, electric, and unapologetically bold. So much so that radio stations had a hard time deciding whether to play it or not. Even Maoist activists called out Lennon, claiming he was afraid to take a real stand. But John? He didn't care. Years later, he clarified. "I thought, well, it's okay to say 'count me out,' but in some ways, you have to be in." This was the first openly political Beatles song, and it set the stage for everything that followed. And speaking of protest anthems, the next song was so explosive that some stations refused to play it at all. 19. Fortunate Son. Creedence Clearwater Revival. 1969. This wasn't just a song, it was a punch in the face to the rich and powerful. The Vietnam War was in full swing, but guess who wasn't getting drafted? The sons of politicians, businessmen, and elites. And CCR called them out. With furious guitar riffs and John Fogerty's gritty vocals, Fortunate Son became the voice of angry working-class Americans who saw through the lies. Fogerty didn't hold back. Some folks are born silver spoon in hand, Lord, don't they help themselves? It was a direct shot at privileged families who sent others to war while protecting their own kids from the draft. Some stations banned it, calling it too divisive, while pro-war politicians branded it as unpatriotic. But for the soldiers who actually fought in Vietnam, this was the song they played in the barracks, a middle finger to the system. Ironically, years later, politicians who were the exact target of the song tried to use it at their rallies. Fogerty was furious. They didn't even get the irony. And if you thought that was rebellious, wait until you hear about a song that got someone permanently banned from TV just for refusing to change a single word. 18. The Pusher. Steppenwolf. 1968. Before Steppenwolf hit the charts with Born to Be Wild, they released one of the most brutally honest songs about drugs ever. The 1960s was filled with songs about getting high, but this one called out the real villains, the drug dealers themselves. Unlike other songs that glamorized drug culture, The Pusher was dark. The lyrics didn't hold back, with lines like, "Godamn the Pusher Man." That one phrase alone was enough to get the song banned from nearly every major radio station. And yet, that's what made it so powerful. While other rock bands were singing about psychedelic journeys, Steppenwolf took aim at the corrupt industry behind it. They weren't attacking users. They were going after the people profiting off addiction. The song got a second life when it was featured in the movie Easy Rider, a film that became a defining moment for counterculture. Suddenly, the song wasn't just controversial, it was legendary. But if you think that was bold, Wait till you hear about the song that left the entire FBI scratching their heads.
Godamn, the pusher man.
17. Heroine, The Velvet Underground, 1967. Most songs about drugs in the 60s were hidden under metaphors and poetic language. Not this one. The Velvet Underground took a completely different approach. They just told the story as it was. And that made people very uncomfortable. Lou Reed didn't glorify heroin use, but he also didn't demonize it. Instead, the song was a haunting, slow-burning journey through addiction. He sang, "Heroin be the death of me. Heroin, it's my wife and it's my life." The music itself reflected the highs and crashes of heroin use. It started off slow, then built into a chaotic frenzy, mimicking the rush and collapse of a drug trip. Some critics called it the most dangerous song ever written. The Velvet Underground wasn't mainstream, they were underground legends, and this song was one of the reasons why. Radio stations refused to touch it, but that only made people want to hear it more. Years later, Lou Reed defended the song, saying it was a realistic look at addiction. If people can't handle reality, that's their problem. But while this song faced backlash, the next one was so extreme that entire states tried to erase it from existence.
Trying to keep my life, 'cause when the blood begins to flow.
16. The End, The Doors, 1967. A song so eerie, so hypnotic, and so disturbing that it got the Doors banned from venues and nearly banned from radio forever. At first, The End sounds like a poetic farewell. Jim Morrison's deep voice floats over an atmospheric, dreamlike soundscape. But as the song progresses, it spirals into darkness. Morrison's voice turns from calm to unhinged, and then he drops the most infamous lyric of his career. The song suddenly takes a chilling, Oedipal turn. Morrison's spoken word section hints at patricide, the murder of one's father, and a disturbingly intimate reference to one's mother. Radio stations immediately took issue with it. Some refused to play the song at all. But what really made The End legendary? A live performance at the Whiskey A Go-Go. Morrison delivered the spoken word section with so much intensity that the club's owner fired the band on the spot. The song's legacy only grew when it was used in the opening of Apocalypse Now. Suddenly, it became the unofficial theme song of the Vietnam War's chaos and destruction. And if you thought that was controversial, the next song got this band banned from national television just for refusing to change a single word.
This is the end, beautiful friend.
15. Light My Fire, The Doors, 1967. One of the biggest rock songs of all time, but one lyric got the Doors permanently banned from television. Light My Fire was the Doors' first #1 hit, but when they were invited to perform it on the Ed Sullivan Show, the producers had one request: change the lyrics. The problem? The line, "Girl, we couldn't get much higher." The show's producers thought it glorified drug use. They told Jim Morrison to sing "Girl, we couldn't get much better" instead. Morrison agreed, but when the cameras rolled, he looked directly into the lens and sang the original lyrics anyway. Ed Sullivan was furious. The network immediately banned the Doors, declaring they would never be invited back. The band didn't care. Morrison later laughed about it, saying, "We weren't going to be sellouts." The controversy only fueled the song's success. It became an anthem for rebellion, both in music and in life. And here's the twist. Years later, when the Doors reunited for a TV performance, the same lyric was no longer a problem. Times had changed, but back in '67, that one word was enough to make history. But while the Doors got banned from TV, the next song was so provocative that entire regions refused to air it. 14. Browneyed Girl, Van Morrison, 1967. A feel-good classic, right? Wrong. Before it became a radio staple, this song was too controversial to play. At first listen, Browneyed Girl sounds innocent, a catchy tune about young love. But when radio stations heard the original lyrics, they slammed the brakes. One line in particular, making love in the green grass behind the stadium. For 1967, that was too explicit for mainstream radio, so stations demanded an edited version. The new line? Laughin' and a runnin' behind the stadium. A much safer choice. But that wasn't the only controversy. Van Morrison himself hated the song's success. He felt it overshadowed his deeper, more artistic work. In interviews, he called it a throwaway song and refused to perform it for years. Yet, despite the edits and Morrison's frustration, Browneyed Girl became an unstoppable hit. It's now one of the most played songs in radio history. And here's the kicker. Many people today don't even know they've been listening to the censored version. But while this song was censored, the next one was so explosive that radio stations worried it would cause actual riots.
Making love in the green grass behind the stadium with you.
13. Street Fighting Man, The Rolling Stones, 1968. When Mick Jagger and Keith Richards wrote this song, they knew it would rattle governments. But what they didn't expect? A full-blown radio ban. The 1960s were already boiling over with civil rights protests, anti-war movements, and violent clashes. So when the Rolling Stones released Street Fighting Man, people didn't just listen, they took it as a call to action. The lyrics were blunt and aggressive. What can a poor boy do except to sing for a rock and roll band? Some heard it as a message of frustration. Others, a direct incitement to revolution. The result? Major radio stations pulled it from their playlists. Some feared it would inspire violent protests. Others claimed the song was too radical for the airwaves. But all the controversy only made it more powerful. Keith Richards later admitted there's no way to stop a song like that. It had a life of its own. And he was right. The song became an anthem for rebellious youth. And if you thought that was bold, the next song was so bizarre that people still argue over what it actually means. 12. I Am The Walrus, The Beatles, 1967. A song so bizarre, cryptic, and unsettling that even today people still argue over what it actually means. But back in the 60s, it was straight up banned. John Lennon wrote I Am The Walrus in response to teachers analyzing Beatles lyrics in school. His goal? Write something so nonsensical that no one could possibly decode it. And he did. I am he as you are me, and we are all together. What? It only gets weirder. Lennon throws in lines about yellow matter custard, eggmen, and even a reference to a murder in Shakespeare's King Lear. But the real controversy? The song's drug-fueled undertones. With the Beatles already linked to LSD use, people were convinced the lyrics were a coded drug message. The BBC wasn't having it. They banned the song, citing the line, "Boy, you've been a naughty girl, you let your knickers down." That was apparently too explicit for British radio. Lennon later said the whole point was to confuse people, and it worked. But banned or not, I Am The Walrus became an anthem of the psychedelic era. But if you think this was strange, the next song was so controversial that people try to erase it from history.
Dripping from a dead dog's eye. Crabble like a fish, white bull.
11. Society's Child, Janis Ian, 1965. A song that shattered racial barriers, but at a dangerous cost. This track didn't just get banned, it got Janis Ian death threats. Society's Child told a painfully real story of a young white girl in love with a black boy. But instead of celebrating love, the song exposes how society destroys it. At just 15 years old, Ian was fearless. She wrote about interracial relationships at a time when it was still illegal in parts of America. But the backlash? Brutal. Radio stations flat out refused to play it. Some pulled it off the air after angry callers threatened them. In southern states, DJs who played the song were fired. And Ian herself? She was blacklisted from multiple venues. One night after a performance, someone left a burnt matchbook on her piano with a chilling message: "Be careful what you sing about." That was a death threat. But the controversy only made Society's Child more powerful. It became an underground anthem, proving that music could challenge the world's biggest injustices. And if you think this was bold, wait until you hear about a song that was so bleak, people feared it would break the country's spirit. 10. Eve of Destruction. Barry Maguire, 1965. A song so dark, so brutally honest that people feared it would shatter the country's morale. Some radio stations didn't just ban it, they called it dangerous. Barry Maguire's Eve of Destruction wasn't just another protest song, it was a grim warning. The Vietnam War was raging, nuclear threats were rising, and civil rights tensions were boiling over. Maguire sang what no one wanted to admit. "You tell me over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction." That one line terrified people. It wasn't hopeful. It wasn't optimistic. It was a brutal reality check. Politicians and conservative groups immediately attacked it. The song was banned from multiple radio stations, with officials claiming it could damage the country's morale. Even Maguire himself was shocked by the controversy. He later said, "I thought I was just singing what everyone already knew, but that's exactly what made the song so powerful. It forced people to face the truth, even if they didn't want to." Despite the bans, Eve of Destruction became a defining anthem of the era. It hit #1 on the charts, proving that people were ready to hear the truth, even if it scared them. And if you thought this song was intense, the next one wasn't just controversial, it got people fired just for playing it.
The Eastern world, it is exploding, violence flaring, bullets loading.
9. Mississippi Godamn. Nina Simone, 1964. A song so raw, so fearlessly honest that it was banned across entire states. This wasn't just a song, it was a direct attack on racial injustice. By 1964, the civil rights movement was in full force. But after the murder of Medgar Evers and the bombing of a church that killed 4 black girls, Nina Simone had enough. She sat down at her piano and poured her anger, grief, and defiance into a song that would change history. Mississippi Goddamn. The title alone was shocking. No metaphors, no sugarcoating, just pure rage. And the lyrics? Even bolder. Alabama's got me so upset, Tennessee made me lose my rest, and everybody knows about Mississippi Goddamn. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Southern radio stations refused to play it. Some even sent the record back to Simone's label, Smashed in Half. But she didn't back down. "This is a show tune," she said sarcastically, "but the show hasn't been written for it yet." Despite the bans, the song became a rallying cry for civil rights. Simone performed it at protests, shocking audiences with her unapologetic truth. She later admitted, "I wasn't thinking about commercial success, I was thinking about survival." And speaking of survival, the next song was so radical that its writer got called a communist just for speaking the truth.
Everybody knows about Mississippi Goddamn.
8. Only a Pawn in Their Game. Bob Dylan, 1964. A song so bold, so politically charged that it directly confronted America's deepest racial injustices. And for some, that was too much to handle. By 1963, the civil rights movement was gaining momentum. But then came the assassination of Medgar Evers, a black activist murdered in his own driveway. Bob Dylan didn't just mourn him, he wrote a song that called out the system that allowed his killer to exist. Only a Pawn in Their Game wasn't just about one racist man pulling the trigger, it exposed how politicians, media, and power structures fueled hate to keep the system in place. Dylan's lyrics hit hard. A South politician preaches to the poor white man, "You've got more than the blacks, don't complain." The idea? Racism wasn't just individual, it was systemic. And that message? It was dangerous to the status quo. Some stations refused to play it. Some audiences booed Dylan for singing it. But civil rights leaders embraced it. Dylan performed the song at the 1963 March on Washington, the same day Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his "I Have a Dream" speech. And that moment, it cemented Bob Dylan's place in protest history. But while Dylan faced backlash, the next song was so controversial that people feared it would corrupt an entire generation.
For the politician's gain as he rises to fame and the poor white remains.
7. The Vatican Rag, Tom Lehrer, 1965. A song so outrageous, so blasphemous, that religious groups tried to get it banned outright. Tom Lehrer was known for his dark, satirical humor, but when he took on the Catholic Church, that crossed the line. The Vatican Rag was a full-on parody of Catholic rituals, mocking the seriousness of Mass by turning it into a vaudeville-style comedy act. The lyrics turned sacred practices into a dance routine. First, you get down on your knees, fiddle with your rosaries, bow your head with great respect, and genuflect, genuflect, genuflect. For Catholics, this wasn't just offensive, it was outright heresy. Religious groups demanded it be taken off the air, and some even lobbied for Lehrer's performances to be shut down. But Lehrer? He found the outrage hilarious. He later joked, "If I had known how offended people would be, I would have written it sooner." The song became an underground hit, passed around among rebellious college students who saw it as a middle finger to religious authority. And today, it remains one of the boldest, most controversial satirical songs ever written. But while this song mocked religion, the next track was banned for something even stranger. Its lyrics were so unclear, the FBI had to investigate.
First you get down on your knees, fiddle with your rosaries, bow your head with great respect, and genuflect, genuflect, genuflect.
6. A Day in the Life, The Beatles, 1967. A song so mysterious, so mind-bending that it got banned by the BBC and led to one of the wildest conspiracy theories in music history. At first glance, A Day in the Life is a dreamy, psychedelic masterpiece. But when the BBC listened closely, they were convinced it had a hidden drug message. The issue? The line, "I'd love to turn you on." For the BBC, this was clear drug slang. They pulled the song from the air, fearing it would encourage LSD use. But the controversy only made it more popular. And then came the conspiracy theory. Fans started digging into the lyrics and came up with the chilling conclusion. This song was about Paul McCartney's death. The idea? Paul had secretly died in a car crash, and the Beatles buried clues in their music. The lyric, "He blew his mind out in a car," was taken as proof. The Beatles, of course, denied everything, but the mystery and controversy kept the song alive. And speaking of controversy, the next song wasn't just banned, it was so shocking that some radio stations refused to even acknowledge its existence.
He blew his mind out in a car. He didn't know.
5. White Rabbit, Jefferson Airplane, 1967. A song so trippy, so psychedelic that it became the soundtrack of the counterculture movement. But radio stations? They wanted nothing to do with it. White Rabbit was inspired by Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. But Grace Slick wasn't just telling a fairy tale, she was making a statement. With lyrics like "one pill makes you larger" and "one pill makes you small," the message was undeniable. The song wasn't just inspired by drugs, it was openly about them. The driving, hypnotic build of the song mirrored the experience of an acid trip, making it an instant anthem for the psychedelic movement. But mainstream radio? They panicked. Many stations banned it outright, worried it would promote LSD use. Even when they did play it, DJs often issued warnings before airing it. Slick later admitted, "We weren't even hiding it. The song was meant to wake people up." And it worked. Despite the bans, White Rabbit became one of the most defining songs of the 1960s, a rebellious ode to altered consciousness and artistic freedom. But if you think that was bold, the next song was so scandalous that it got the Rolling Stones in trouble with TV executive. 4. Let's Spend the Night Together. The Rolling Stones, 1967. A song so scandalous, so outright suggestive that it got the Rolling Stones into big trouble with TV executives and nearly ruined their US television career. By 1967, the Rolling Stones had built their image on rebellion and controversy. But when they released Let's Spend the Night Together, things escalated fast. The problem? The title itself was too explicit for mainstream audiences. When the band was invited to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show, the producers gave them a strict order. They had to change the lyrics from "Let's spend the night together" to "Let's spend some time together." Mick Jagger reluctantly agreed, but when they performed live, he made his disgust obvious. Every time he sang the edited lyric, he rolled his eyes dramatically. Sullivan's team was furious. The band was told they would never be invited back. But instead of hurting them, the controversy only fueled their bad boy image. Despite the bans, the song became a hit, proving once again that the Rolling Stones couldn't be tamed. And if you think that was bad, the next song was so extreme it didn't just get banned from radio, it triggered an actual FBI investigation. 3. Louie, The Kingsmen, 1963. A song so wildly misunderstood, so feared by authorities, that the FBI spent 31 months investigating it, only to admit they had no idea what the lyrics were. Louie by the Kingsmen wasn't supposed to be controversial. It was just a garage rock cover of an old song. But there was one problem. The way Jack Eli sang it, slurred, distorted, and completely incomprehensible, made people think the lyrics were dirty. Rumors started spreading. Parents claimed the song was full of obscenities. Concerned citizens sent dozens of letters to the government demanding an investigation. And the FBI actually listened. They launched a full-scale probe, analyzing the lyrics, playing the song at different speeds, even interviewing band members. After 31 months, their conclusion? The lyrics are unintelligible at any speed. Yep, the entire investigation was for nothing. The song was harmless all along. But by then it was already legendary. The FBI probe only made it more popular, turning Louie into the ultimate symbol of rebellious rock and roll. But while this song was banned for its mystery, the next one was banned for something even bolder. It called out corruption in the music industry itself. 2. Masters of War, Bob Dylan, 1963. A song so venomous, so direct, that even Dylan's biggest fans were shocked. It wasn't poetic, it was a lyrical missile, and it was aimed directly at the Pentagon. Masters of War was Dylan at his most furious. Released during the Cold War and amid nuclear fears, it didn't gently ask for peace. It condemned the people profiting from war. He didn't sing to soldiers, he sang against the men in suits who sent them out to die. Lines like, "You fasten the triggers for the others to fire, then you sit back and watch when the death count gets higher," didn't just make people uncomfortable, they made them angry. Veterans groups called it treasonous. Politicians wanted it buried. And the press? Some called Dylan unpatriotic for even writing it. But Dylan refused to back down. He once said, "It's not an anti-war song. It's an anti-those-who-start-wars song." Despite the backlash, or maybe because of it, Masters of War became a secret weapon of protesters everywhere. Its final lines chilled everyone. I hope that you die and your death will come soon. That wasn't peace and love. That was rage in poetry form. And if you thought Dylan pulled punches, the next song didn't just confront evil, it made evil uncomfortable. One, Strange Fruit, Billie Holiday, 1939, but banned heavily into the 1960s. This wasn't just a song. This was a scream, disguised as jazz. And even decades after its release, radio stations still refused to play it. Strange Fruit was Billie Holiday's haunting ballad about lynching in the American South. The lyrics were so stark, so chilling, that many stations in the 1960s refused to touch it, even as the civil rights movement raged on. Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root. It didn't hide behind metaphors. It was the metaphor. Executive tried to ban it. Politicians tried to bury it. The FBI trailed Holiday for years, and her own label refused to release it at first. Billie performed it anyway. In smoky jazz clubs, she'd demand the room go silent, lights dimmed, and no drinks served during the performance. When she sang it, people wept or left, unable to handle the truth. Even Nina Simone years later called Strange Fruit the ugliest song I've ever heard and the most necessary. And today, it's been preserved in the US National Recording Registry. But in the 1960s, it was still seen as too dangerous to air. If you love this, you'll want to check out more insane music history moments. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next deep dive. Like, comment, and share, because trust me, the next story is even wilder. See you soon.